Recording is on.
All right. So as you have, we've started recording this session, and whoever will be joining us will either join a recording session, but also those who will watch this session later, they will be listening to whatever we discuss within this period of 30 minutes. So as to make a brief introduction about what we're going to discuss today and who is going to be who in this discussion. To start with myself, I'm called Kiiza Hussein Saddam. I'm the African lead for our cause organization, which is based in Canada and UK, but also operating in different continents, including Africa. And in Africa, I lead the Africa lead, who is working on SDG, that is the Sustainable Development Goals agenda. And I'm trying to make sure that we, in a small way, or we can, or in whichever way we can, we contribute towards realization of the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, as per the UN mandate. So also away from that, I do work as a lawyer. I'm a professional lawyer practicing in East Africa. And also, I do happen to run different initiatives as any other responsive citizen or proactive young person who is interested to make sure that the world achieves its set goals of SDG, but also we contribute in making the world a better place in whatever way we can. That's what I do in my daily life. So this we launched our cause campaign starting by this year. And so far, we've handled different issues, but also we've had different activities, including capacity building sessions, like which we're going to have today, where we discuss on different topics that resonate with realization or achievement of the SDGs. So this month, we are going to be talking or focusing on SDG 13, 14, and 15, which is on climate change, on life under sea, but also on our environment under SDG 15, biodiversity and life on land. So that's why we thought that this discussion would be well suited to have this topic that requires the participation of everyone, as per our topic, which says the collective role in combating climate change and environmental degradation. So, what is our collective role from our different perspectives, but also our different perhaps professions and the lifelong skills? So this discussion will help the young people and also those who don't know where to start from to be able to get at least some knowledge on how do you contribute towards achieving a sustainable future, which involves taking small actions towards combating climate change, but also taking those actions that can keep our environment sustainable and safer. So it is a pleasure to be having this session, and also to have our special guest speaker who is going to be talking about this topic, whom I will give time to introduce himself, since I may not properly introduce him. And it's a great honor to have you, sir. And now you can proceed making your remarks. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Kiiza, and the Our Cause organization for the honor of inviting me to speak with you. I have looked at what accomplishments you have been able to secure, and the focus of the organization is excellent and so needed at this time. I'm here in Chicago, Illinois, United States. And I work on a host of issues related to the SDG 13, 14, and 15. My background is in agriculture, toxicology, where I study the impacts of toxic substances on the environment and humans, as well as ecology, working with rivers and streams to conserve and protect them. And I've dedicated most of my life, professional life, to working on these issues, protecting biodiversity, in both the land, in the oceans, in the air, as well as improving the quality of life for people. And that really ties together with the Sustainable Development Goals. When you're talking about, as we talk about the need for collective action, I could not agree with that more strongly. What I've noticed over my 30 years of working in the environment is that issues are, or actions are often started by individuals. We see a problem, we want to respond, but often we don't know how to do that. As you mentioned in the beginning, where do we start? Who do I work with? What do I need to know? Those are very important questions, but I don't want those to stop an individual from beginning to become concerned and to try to do something about it. What I like to do is to say, yes, you have an issue. Here's how we turn maybe anger or concern into productive action. And that's the key. We have to take our energy and put it in a format that gets real accomplishments. That's often difficult. As we plan at all levels of government, many people have good ideas. It's how do we implement those ideas? And that's where the idea of collective action is so important. Individuals identify issues, and when they gather together, when we reach out to each other, we create teams that become much more successful. None of us know everything on any issue. We must bring in people who have different levels of expertise, and not just in the technical or scientific aspects, but the human and social and behavioral and educational components of these actions. And once you get a mass of people, and it doesn't even have to be large numbers, then you start seeing the ability to have individuals do specific tasks based on their expertise and bring them together for collective success. We did that earlier this year here in the Chicago area. I live and was born and raised in a very highly industrial area, lots of environmental pollutants. Most of the natural areas have been lost to development, housing, and industry. And we have significant problems with air quality and water quality. In January, we found a company that wanted to build a $1 billion natural gas power plant near a very poor area. And that would have added 2 million pounds of air pollution a year to our local environment and 8 billion pounds of greenhouse gas equivalents to the atmosphere every year. 4 of us started to recognize this as an issue, began to mobilize others. At the end of what turned out to be a very successful effort, we had over 1,000 people fighting to stop this unnecessary and polluting plant. We were successful. You've seen the same thing in Kenya at Lamu with a defeat of a major coal-fired power plant. That is important. Those are important lessons because it was individuals who then networked and began to have collective action, and again, a very important success.
Well, that's really impressive. Thank you so much for giving us your opening remarks. I don't know, you are done, right?
Yeah, all I would say is that with questions, any questions are I'm ready to answer if I can. And again, the idea of individuals gathering together for that collective action is so important.
Amazing. Thank you so much, David. And I can't restate the importance of having this discussion, but also the timing itself. just recently, it was reported that June was one of the most the month that received too much heat. The temperatures were so high, and that was
Yes.
to us who feel to that the world should be working towards having a more sustainable future. We should be seeing more conducive environment rather than a more extreme environment where temperatures are high or there's a abrupt change of climate and weather and extreme events take place which claim lives of people. So maybe to people who will want to know more about this, what we intend to through this discussion, uh, we we've seen the enactment or the ratification of the climate change accord, which was mobilized and enacted and ratified in 2015 in November in Paris, where in the agreement or in the accord they set a guideline or what countries should be doing or what even private individuals and other stakeholders should be doing in order to realize the reduction of carbon gases and also meeting the target of staying within 2 or 1.5 Celsius degrees temperatures by in the next near future. So for the people who really wonder how is that feasible, how rather is that realistic? How can the world move from 2 degrees Celsius to 1.5 within the near future? How do you tell that person that it is possible and you can do such and such things as an individual on an individual basis, and we contribute towards achieving the set goals of the Paris Agreement?
Well, that's a very important question. And the Paris Agreement is an essential part of mobilizing and guiding individuals and organizations, private and government, in the direction that we need to go to hopefully keep that warming under 1.5 degrees C. That's a tough goal. It's particularly tough when you have a administration in the United States who is reversing many of the projects and many of the accomplishments that we've already had here, and literally going backwards and creating more pollution and weakened environmental regulations. When the largest polluter on the face of the planet, the United States, fails to adhere to these the climate accords, we have a big issue, and it's even more imperative that individuals and other nations take the lead and show that this can be done. For those who are concerned, is it a feasible, real, achievable goal by 2030 to minimize that temperature increase? I would say there is a chance that we could do this. We do have the technology. The science is there. It is generating the political and social will to implement those projects and to do it in a way that protects and grows the economy, as well as raises the dignity of humans and human beings on the planet. Those goals go hand in hand. And for those who are, how can I start? What can we do? You do start at home, whether it's small efforts like the leading countries in Africa are doing to ban plastic bags, let's say, as a small example. It may not have a direct impact on climate change, but it educates people into how really easy it is to do the right thing. And so we see that leadership coming out of many nations in Africa and elsewhere around the world. And that is so critical now because the United States is failing to lead. That will change, but it is so critical that people not stop their efforts. So from the very most local effort of conserving water, protecting wetlands, protecting natural forests and natural habitats, while using them to restoring degraded areas that have been damaged already. That can be done. And what people find is that nothing succeeds like success. Once a wetland is saved and some families can create an economic advantage by sustainably using them, other people will follow. So setting up model examples of the actions you want to take to let others see that it works and can be done is an essential first step.
Wow, thank you so much. I definitely, there's so much that we can do to contribute towards achieving the goal 13, action 13 under SDG 13 to by 2030. And if you mentioned the role of USA in this, how USA has always been seen as a global leader in everything that really matters to the sustainable development and peaceful coexistence in this world. Uh, we cannot doubt that. But of recently, the world has kind of seen an abrupt change in how we used to know the role of USA. And I myself, as a climate change activist, I felt like by USA pulling out from the climate change agreement of Paris, I felt that the world is now going to remain stagnant and fail to have a leader who can, a leading nation which can show that everything is achievable within time frame. I don't want to go on individual who is responsible for this, but do you think in USA, do you think there is still room for USA to play in making sure that still we can achieve staying below 5.5 degrees by 2030?
I do. That's another excellent question. I want to reassure people that this is not what's happening in the United States regarding environmental leadership is not what the vast majority of Americans want. It will change. And
Okay.
many of us are making sure that that change is going to happen through peaceful elections, education, and actions at different scales of government, local scales. So we have even our local community taking steps to combat climate change. And once enough of those local entities do that, things happen at a larger scale. The other thing to recognize is that technology of sustainable energy production is doing much of our work for us. Coal is simply not economical. Not only is it the most filthy, unhealthy, environmentally damaging form of energy, but it doesn't pay. And what you're seeing across the country, despite efforts by some in politics, in our political leadership, to increase the use of coal, coal plants are closing across the country. Solar, wind, conservation, geothermal are all taking the place and more economical. So we'll use the economics, we'll take the actions by individuals and other levels of government, and then combine those with others across the globe to say a small group of people in political power are simply not going to be able to stop the progress and movement towards a sustainable future. We simply can't afford to let that happen. And so I want to reassure people, the United States will continue to be a leader and hopefully to assist other countries and to learn from other countries. This is the opportunity now for people across the globe to show their leadership, and which is out there and effective, and to push us in a direction that needs to be pushed.
Well, thank you so much. I definitely agree with you. Maybe because perhaps I agree on the same line, like you believe in, of making the world more sustainable. It definitely includes keeping the environment greener and making sure we reduce our carbon footprints, we reduce our carbon emissions, and we go green and also make greener cities. But now the challenge comes to people who are perhaps climate change deniers, and those who feel that the world can still live and stay even regardless of whether we do anything or not. But now also we understand that there are intrinsic impacts that accrue as a result of failure to take action on climate change. For example, we've seen conflicts that have accrued as a result of climate change. If you go in East Africa, in parts of Kenya and Uganda, there are where communities of people are clashing over resources such as water for their cattle. Those are herdsmen, such as communities are clashing over things like crops. Cattle, people are stealing each other's crops because in their part there was dry season and they didn't cultivate anything. So you can see how climate change is causing more impacts. So we've seen epidemic diseases where epidemic diseases have arisen because of the change in the climate. We've seen so many impacts that climate change has caused or has fueled. So what now to the African also countries that we feel countries in Africa have contributed less in terms of carbon emissions? Yet we've also received some of the, of course, disastrous consequences of the countries such as developed countries such as US and European countries, have been consistently contributing fossil gases into the atmosphere, but impacts are felt here in Africa. So what should be the role of those countries vis-a-vis these other small African countries, and how should this government handle these negotiations, or making sure that these countries are held accountable towards perhaps supporting these other African countries to meet the goals set?
And that's a big task, and it's very important to recognize that, as I said before, the biggest polluters are often, and the richest, wealthiest nations are often those that will experience less impact from climate change and also can afford to take steps to increase their resilience. That's not the case for many of the developing countries around the world. And unfortunately, they bear the brunt, as they have for in many issues, the brunt of the problem. So in a large sense, there's no, what the wealthy countries need to be doing is assisting and paying for progress in developing countries while educating and doing everything we need to do. We saw with the hurricanes that hit Mozambique and Zimbabwe and the flooding in Malawi, disastrous consequences. So despite the lack of leadership in some of the bigger countries, it is essential that even the smallest countries in Africa are able to take steps in now to protect their citizens, protect the natural land that helps us stabilize and mitigate against climate change, and move forward, which is a tall order. That is where international agreements come in, as well as organizations like yourself and your own, our cause, and others who can help to bridge that gap where governments are not working together. That is essential. In the dry lands of East Africa, those are very susceptible to climate change. And where you have pastoralists interacting with agricultural development, like along Tana River in Kenya, where you have real violent clashes, or You see with oil development up in the Turkana region of Kenya, where that takes a lot of water that may not be available then for crops and human use. That causes conflict. And we have to be very aware that there are entities across the globe whose goal is to increase conflict and unpredictability, because that results in humans doing different types of behavior that are short-term rather than a long-term perspective. So we have to work against that political effort to destabilize in order to exploit, as well as the education of local people to know how to organize and for lack of a better term, fight back against these entities. So in South Sudan, for example, where you have constant war and a huge influx of refugees into Uganda, those are climate change issues, but hard to talk about climate change when you don't have food or you're being killed or your family's being killed. So when I talk to individuals, and with regards to deniers and those who don't believe, I say don't talk about climate change. Talk about the issues. You can't deny that a hurricane or a monsoon came through Mozambique. You cannot deny when there's a drought. Whether they want to believe that it's caused by climate change or not, you don't even need to argue that. Talk about resilience to drought and actions at that scale. It just eliminates the whole conflict over a large scale issue that people have biases on. Those biases will change as the deniers either get educated or leave the political spectrum and don't have the power anymore. What you'll find is that even the most diehard deniers, when you confront with science, simply can't argue it. And that puts them in a bad position. And so we want to work with people, we want to be compassionate towards individuals, but we don't want to have rose-colored glasses on or distorted viewpoints of what people's motivations are. Find the motivation, identify where your commonalities are, and work on those.
All right, thank you so much. Actually, what is ironic is that those deniers, they never present something tangible that can really justify their position. The climate, the reality is not on their side. Science is not on their side. But it perturbs me to still hear the same people re-emphasize that this is not real. And to even a child, it doesn't make sense. When people are dying every day of hurricanes, there is sunshine is too much. There's a lot of global warming. We see ocean. The ocean is melting. The ice is melting in the ocean and all that. And doesn't make sense. So as we conclude, we have a few, I think, like 2 or 3 minutes to sum up this discussion. I will still go back to our discussion, which is the collective role of everyone in combating climate change and environmental degradation. Maybe what I can say on this is that I've seen people take small actions. Actually, I remember in one of our campaign was take small actions, big change. Through those small actions, like either deciding to buy things in a more recyclable, perhaps envelope, rather than buying a polythene bag that is not it's going to damage our environment because it's not recyclable. It is a small action that everyone can afford. Deciding not to use a car if the distance is walkable. It is a small action that you can take. Or perhaps sharing a car if you're a family and you all have cars, deciding to use one car whenever you move, or use bicycles if possible. It's healthy for your body, but also it's healthy for the environment. Then also in relation to our communities, in most cases we've seen that those undeveloped communities, they rely on firewood to cook their meals, but also to lighting their houses, they rely on carbonated fuels such as kerosene. Mm-hmm. So we felt, for us in our campaign, we had a project called Young African Leaders Talk and Action on Climate Change. What we emphasized was the you don't need to do all these things. Actually, we calculated and found that the amount you spend on buying fuel to light your candle, or rather your small lamp at home, and also the, cutting down trees to make sure that you have firewood to cook your meals, is going to be more expensive than just buying either a solar panel where you have enough electrical solar energy to light your house and even make some meals. Or perhaps using biogas. Biogas is available to us because most of these communities have animals. Even ourselves,
Yeah.
we create a resource to use as biogas through our disposables. So we emphasize the need to go green, but also use technology and innovation to make sure that we have a greener and renewable way of living. Then perhaps also the other small things I thought maybe people could take is, for example, there are people who decide to, okay, I like perfume actually. The spray that we spray ourselves to smell good is good. But indicators are there that these are the carbon dioxide that we are accumulating to the atmosphere. Maybe you need a deodorant, but you don't need a spray if you need to keep fresh. The other thing you found that in terms of the how much carbon footprint do we have between, let's say, Africa and Europe, we find one American maybe has over around 20 cubic carbon dioxide tons vis-a-vis 0.00.5 for an African. And this accrues as a result of owning two cars when you could still have one. You still want to carry two iPhones, yet still one could do the work. You still want to have all these electricals in your house, which at a later point, of course, they have nowhere to go except to our environment. And they acidify our oceans, because we've seen how plastics are acidifying our oceans and kill biodiversity, but also they pollute our environment. So these are the things that we could reduce on personal level, and also mobilize now the rest of communities and the world to plant more trees, to have greener cities, and also perhaps reduce on how forests are cut down and burnt down, how animals are killed because of poaching or animal trafficking. All these have a ripple impact in our environment and our survival. So those are my remarks on this, and I'll now give it to you the opportunity to use 2 minutes and sum up this discussion, and then we can share it with our audience, perhaps one way or the other. They will learn what a person can do at individual level. Thank you.
Well, again, thank you so much for the honor of being able to speak with you and the other viewers. And I agree wholeheartedly with those actions that you are talking about. For those who have an organization or a small collective group throughout your listening, your viewing audience, give rewards for good behavior. Let people know that individuals are doing the right thing. Social status matters to people. When we have places where they give blood here for people with accidents or have diseases and you need to have blood transfusions, many Americans give blood. And what the Red Cross does is give a small button that says, "Kiss me, I gave blood." What it shows is a status as an individual in the community that you've done something, and there's a social reward. That is incredibly powerful. Even when we have no money to give to somebody or no material, we can give them the recognition in their society that they're doing the right thing. That's an action that can be taken right now by individuals across the globe. We can do this. We can solve these problems. We can identify the disproportionate impacts. We can make sure the large countries do the right thing. It will take that collective action, as you talked about, and that was the basis of this conversation.
Amazing, amazing. I really, I would love to continue this discussion perhaps for the next hours, but of course, because of time, but we can always schedule another discussion like this where we get to explore the possibilities of now collaborating to mobilize bigger change. We've seen what an individual can do, but how about a collective effort of people in different countries and different continents coming together, mobilizing resources, and we run a campaign that really can make a long-lasting impact on this world. So thank you so much again. I'll keep in touch, of course, with you. We need to talk about the best way we can put together a project that, it can make some difference here and back to Chicago and maybe other parts of USA, for those who believe that USA can still play a bigger role in making sure that we achieve the SDGs by 2030.
We want all of you to visit, and particularly yourself, and we will make sure you have a wonderful educational visit. And I can't wait to get back to East Africa and be among some of the best people I've ever met. Thank you so much.
Wow, that would be so humbling. Thank you so much. I look forward to that, and let's move forward. We shall discuss more on this and make it happen. Otherwise, I wish to thank you, and for the audience, those who are listening, who have listened to this discussion, but also those who will listen to it and watch it and get to learn something, but also take actions through learning all this, through this discussion. We want real action that brings out results. That's what we aim for, and you can do it through taking small actions. Have a nice evening. Yes. Thank you. Bye-bye.